So recently, a friend of mine has been telling me about his experiences with ayahuasca and ayahuasca ceremonies and how it's completely changed his life. And he has become a new person, a changed person, opened up to new realities and new ways of experiencing and understanding himself and the world around him. Now, in case you're not familiar, ayahuasca is this psychoactive brew, like a tea, that is made with psychedelic plants in South America. And the ayahuasca ceremonies are, probably 1,000 years old in South America. And more recently, they've come to America and other parts of the world as well. And the ceremony is you have a number of people coming together. Normally, it's in the evening after a lot of mental preparation. And, there's music and there are guides, therapists who are controlling and making sure that everything is safe and going, as it should. And then you're drinking this tea, this brew. And very quickly it starts to have its effects on you. And it can have some very extreme physical effects of a lot of nausea and vomiting and screaming and some pain and headaches. But it also has this psychedelic effect where it is playing with your mind and opening up your mind. And you're seeing things, visions, perceptions of yourself, of people, the world around you in a complete new light. And that's the experience of the ayahuasca ceremony. And as he's been telling me about these things, I've been thinking about what kind of role can they play or should they play in spiritual experiences, right? Which is what I want to talk about today. Can psychedelics, hallucinogenics, cannabinoids, CBD, can they help you achieve a spiritual experience? So imagine the following scenario in your life, right? You're a human being, and the way you've been created and designed, you're pretty much controlled by your mind, by your brain. And as neuroscientists describe, you're controlled all the time by this, what we call a default mode network, which is called the DMN. And the DMN is these several regions of the brain that work together that pretty much govern and control all of your cognitive behavior, cognitive patterns, and behavioral patterns. So it's the way you perceive yourself, your sense of self, and how you integrate your sense of self with your self-awareness and the way you perceive others and the world around you, and the way you process these things, which is all conditioned by nature, nurture, your experiences of growing up. And then you're pretty much sort of stuck in that pattern of the DMN of your brain. And that regulates you and that controls your thinkings and your patterns and your reactions. And, it's, as we all know, it's very hard to ever step out of that box as much as we want to. This is me, right? Now imagine you were able to suspend your DMN. You were able to take your default mode network of your mind and sort of put it offline. What would happen? Well, what would happen is you'd have this complete dissolution of self. Your ego, your sense of self would become dissolved, would disappear. And suddenly you would be elevated to what we could call a higher consciousness, where you would start to see yourself, people, and things around you in a complete new light, in new ways, with new connections and new insights that you never could perceive or understand previously, because you're no longer under the control of your normal default mode network. And you've been elevated, and you could be connecting with absolute real truths, no longer controlled by your subjective experiences of the way your typical DMN is controlling you. You've been opened up to a new, possibly true, higher reality, right? Sounds amazing. So what am I describing here? Am I describing a psychedelic experience, or am I describing a spiritual experience? So the answer is both, right? Both are pretty much very similar. The place which they put you into is very similar. I mean, there is going to be definitely several differences, and especially the spiritual experience, the way we in Judaism and based on Jewish spiritual wisdoms and Kabbalah, the way we think about this and the kind of truths we believe in obviously are very different than what, without that kind of guidance. But the general place where you are, where there's this, yourself and your egos become dissolved and you're able to process yourself in the world outside of that box, is the psychedelic experience, and it is the spiritual experience. So if the question is, can these psychedelics and hallucinogenics help you achieve a spiritual experience? I think the answer is yes, certainly so. But I think there's a better, more important question that needs to be asked. And that is, should psychedelics, hallucinogenics, CBD be helping you achieve a spiritual experience? And here, I think the honest answer is no. Now, I'll tell you why. So we need to understand what is truly a genuine spiritual experience. In the spiritual teachings, especially of Judaism, we're not only concerned about the destination, about where you want to be, having that high as a spiritual experience, but we're equally concerned about the path you take to get to that high. That path needs to be equally genuine and equally spiritual. So in the language of spiritual Hasidic teachings, we talk about the short, long path versus the long, short path. So the short, long path is when you get somewhere really quickly with the help of some kind of stimulants, but it's a long path because you got there too quickly. You didn't get there in a very genuine way. And so even though you're there, you're not really there. You're not there in your depth. You haven't worked to get there. So it's a long path because you're always going to be dealing and suffering from the fact that you never got there wholeheartedly. The long, short path is when you take the longer path to get to somewhere with a lot of effort and a lot of work. When you get there, you're really there. And so it's the short path at the end of the day because you have genuinely acquired this experience for yourself. So we talk about a spiritual experience. Talk about getting on a high, right? We all want to get on a high. The soul, which is your spiritual self, which is a piece of God, the soul is naturally always on a high. The soul is a piece of truth within you. It always sees things in their truthful way without the distractions of how other things can taint it and distract it from other things. So the soul before it came down into your body, the soul in heaven, it was on a natural high, right? A life of bliss and of truth. What happened is, for whatever reason, God sent that soul down into this world and into your body and into the human condition of your mind and your heart and all of the temptations and all of the distractions and all of the things that your body and material and physical self is gravitating towards and is sort of taking the soul away from its mission and what it really wants to accomplish. Now imagine you would take these stimulants, these substances, which would circumvent the bodily human condition, take that DMN, which you are normally controlled by, and sort of cast it away, send it offline, and you're able to free the soul to live this high, this spiritual experience. Will the soul experience that spiritual experience? The answer is yes, but the soul will turn to you and will say, I don't understand. The experience I'm having now, I already had this when I was in heaven. I had this before I came down to this world. This is what I came down here for? No. The reason why I came down here into our body, subject to your mind and your heart and your physical self, your human condition, is because I want to schlep, I want to integrate this spiritual high into my physical self. In other words, we need to do a lot of work with each other. We need to partner with each other, using your human natural tools and resources, how to put them on the bandwagon and make them part of this experience as well. So the true spiritual high cannot happen quickly. It cannot happen with ignoring and casting aside our human obstacles and just releasing the soul free. It has to happen with the integration of our own minds and our natural self and our own heart and all of the experiences that make up our humanity. And how do we take those things and develop them and mature them and refine them and work on them, that they too can be uplifted? So as a whole person, I have been elevated into a spiritual high, right? Take from the world of medicine, for example. So in medicine, let's say you're going through a particular condition. There's the short way to deal with that, and that is sort of treating a symptom, or there's the longer way, the deeper way, which is treating the cause. So a simple example, if you have a headache, okay, so what could you do to alleviate that headache from yourself? Well, you could take a Tylenol, right? And pretty quickly that'll sort of numb you when your headache is gone. But have you fixed the reasons why you have that headache? Not really. So in 6 hours' time, the medicine wears off. Your headache is back. You got to take another Tylenol as well. Or you could treat the cause and you could say, why do I have a headache? Maybe I'm short on sleep. Maybe my body needs rest. Let me listen to my body. Maybe I need hydration. Maybe I should be eating healthier foods. So the other way would be to treat it in a much longer path, which go to sleep, get some rest, drink, eat well, give it some time, and then you've truly resolved and repaired your headache. You no longer have the headache anymore. That's called the long, shorter way. That makes for a genuine spiritual experience here in this world. I want to read for you a letter, at least parts of a letter, that the Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote to a university student in 1965. He was studying in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Now, in the 60s, that was the explosion of the psychedelics and the LSD, and that's when Timothy Leary became very popular. And today we look back at him and it's not clear how good or he was for society. And I think it's President Nixon that called him the most dangerous man in America, because that's the time when LSD was out of control, right? So everyone was dabbling in that, especially the youth. So the Rebbe wrote to the student the following things, and I'm just going to read some of the quotes. The Rebbe wrote as follows: the Jewish way is to go from strength to strength, not by means of drugs and other artificial stimulants, which have a place only if they are necessary for the physical health. So for health purposes, the Rebbe already entertained back in the 60s, they may have a place. But if you're looking for a genuine spiritual experience, you need to go from strength to strength, from step to step, using your own bodily, physical self and applying that in the doctrine of your spiritual path. Then the Rebbe wrote, before any drugs are taken, one should first utilize all one's natural capacities. And when this is done truly and fully, I do not think that there will be a need to look for artificial stimulants. Don't think it's not possible. It is possible. Is it harder? Yes. Does it take longer? Yes. Does it take more discipline and control? Yes. And that's exactly the point. If it wouldn't be hard and difficult, and if it wouldn't take a lot of discipline and control, it would be easy, then it wouldn't be real. And then the Rebbe concluded with what I think is the heart of the matter. And this is the final point that I want to make. The Rebbe wrote, the opinion of the Torah in general is that the person should be the master over his or herself, and enslavement of any sort is wrong. A true spiritual experience is made out of a sense of freedom. Freedom to be fully in control of oneself, fully master oneself. Now, the irony here is that the control you want to be having is not the control that you've adapted over life, whereby your DMN and all of the cognitive patterns and all the things that you've been raised with, nature or nurture, are controlling you, because then again, you're a slave. The control you want to have is somewhat of a suppression of control myself to the extent that I can have freedom, that I can be able to open myself up and experience higher truths, real truths that don't come naturally to me, but I'm open for them. I'm open for fresh and new insight. And using the guidance of Jewish mysticism and the Torah, what is really true? What's the truths of our worlds? What's the energies that make our world exist? Why was our world created? Why am I sent here? Those are very big questions, and we can truly connect with them when we have those open, free experiences of a spiritual experience. Anything that's controlling us, we're becoming a slave. When you are under the influence of the psychedelics or any other kinds of similar substances, you're feeling free, but you're really a slave. And at some point, that's going to wear off. And the truth is, I think people who go through these experiences and take these substances, whilst they're on them, it may be very awakening and very enlightening and put them on a high. But how much of a long-term effect? Once the effect is worn off, have they just come back to their old self? Or do they truly become a different, changed person? I'm not convinced that that quick stimulant experience could create real change within you. You may just come back to your old self, because real change is going to have to be created by you without an external substance, and you're going to put in the hard work. I want to tell you a story. They say a story about a great Rebbe, a great tzaddik. I think it was a Chabad Rebbe. And every day before he would pray, his attendant would bring him a glass of water. He would drink the water and then he would pray. One day there was a mistake, and the attendant brought him a glass of vodka instead of water, which he drank. It was given to him, and then he prayed. And afterwards, the attendant realized the mistake that he made, and he was so apologetic. And he came to the Rebbe and he said, "I'm so sorry. What I put into your glass today, it wasn't water, it was vodka. My apologies." So the Rebbe smiled, and the Rebbe said, "I want you to know something. Today, my prayer was out of this world. My prayer was different than any other prayer experience I've ever had. I was so enlightened. I was taken up on a high. I was so immersed. I felt like I was in a mode of an experience I've never had before, except," and he said in Yiddish, "Se nicht mir was gedavent, se the mashke was gedavent." It wasn't me praying, it was the alcohol within me praying. And that's a very powerful story. Those external stimulants can get us to very high places, but it's them getting us there. It's not us achieving it on our own. So we'll get to the destination, but we won't get there properly in a very real way. Right? I once read an article of somebody who dabbled in all kinds of these substance experiences. And he said, "I could have achieved what I achieved through 10 years in psychotherapy, but instead I did it real quick." And he was speaking positively about those drugs. But I thought to myself, that's exactly the point. That's why if you're pursuing a true spiritual experience, you should not be pursuing it through those stimulants, because rather spend the 10 years in psychotherapy. You will truly get there. You will truly get to an experience, a high that is healthy for you, that is good for you, that is truly beneficial for you, and your life will truly be changed. So discuss, if you're going through certain things and you think you need to be discuss with your medical professional. I'm not going to give you advice about that, but if I want to give you some advice about your spiritual pursuits, rather, you should take spiritual texts of Jewish wisdoms, study them, immerse in them, meditate on them, engage in spiritual practices, the performance of a mitzvah. We have the recipe in our tradition. And when we do them really wholeheartedly, invest ourselves and internalize that, you will be able to achieve, through a lot of hard work, discipline, and control, over possibly a lengthy period of time, a genuine and true spiritual experience. God bless you, and good luck.